Non-consensual, sexually explicit deepfakes of Taylor Swift went viral on Twitter, amassing over 27 million views and more than 260,000 likes in 19 hours before the account that posted the image was suspended. Deepfakes portraying Swift nude and in sexual scenarios continue to proliferate on X, including reposts of the viral deepfake images. This is Kat. She is a tech and culture reporter for NBC News. I have her here today to talk about the Taylor Swift deepfake porn situation, as well as the general state of deepfakes. Unfortunately, this is something where the law is very slow to catch up with technology, and we are seeing a rise in deepfake pornography, and it's not just being used to target celebrity women, it's trickled down. It's affecting your everyday women and girls. A very scary situation to be in with this technology. Let's start and talk about the piece that you wrote. Did you see what was happening on Twitter?
Yes.
Okay.
So I saw the images come across my timeline, and I feel like my immediate reaction was like, scroll away, like I shouldn't be seeing this. And I had a couple colleagues send it to me, like, have you seen this? And each time I would get a new message about it, the image would have like tripled in the viewership.
I saw something as well. I scrolled past it, and then I saw the hashtags from Swifties who truly unionize so quickly. I don't know if there's another fan base, no pun intended, as swift as they are. Why is X not doing anything? They're not taking action on these deepfakes. And the crazy thing is that the technology used to create them can also more easily be used to detect them.
Absolutely. There are like a plethora of different technological solutions. One thing, for example, if they truly cared, they could make a watermark of each of these viral Taylor Swift images and ensure that it's never possible to be re-uploaded again. Like you said, they could use AI detection systems, and similar detection systems are not perfect, but can at least flag with a high probability whether an image is AI generated, as well as whether an image is sexually explicit. But what I found through my reporting is that X, formerly Twitter, Google, Microsoft, YouTube, all of these big tech platforms, they're not proactively taking any steps to combat non-consensual deepfakes. They typically will have systems where you can react to them. Like here, obviously you had the fans who were able to mass report the accounts. Even then, a lot of them would get responses back that said this doesn't break our rules. So you have to truly have like a mass number of people doing it to even get through those types of systems. Other platforms like Google, they do have forms where if you're a victim of this, you can upload the URLs of the different search results that contain the deepfakes. They'll then supposedly go through and flag them. But what they're doing is they're taking the onus of this problem and they're putting it on victims and saying, you have to be the one who knows that this is happening in the first place, because most people don't. You have to subject yourself to all these images, and then you have to do hours and hours of work in like collecting the images, screenshotting them.
You manage to succeed on one website and then 10 more pop up.
They're multiplying faster than anyone could humanly keep track of them.
The reason why more and more of these sites are popping up is because they pretty much have immunity due to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Essentially, websites are not responsible for content uploaded by third parties. So all of these sites get to like, you can't sue us because we're not the ones uploading this. And that's why they incentivize. Some of these sites have games to incentivize uploads. Like, let's do a contest for the best deepfakes of Jennifer Lawrence. So that way, like, they continue to have people uploading on their sites. One of the most popular sites, it's getting like 14 million clicks a month. It is just multiplying so quickly, and there's really nothing in place legally to stop this.
Yes. There are a couple of issues with sort of the legal framework that currently exists. One of the first issues is that from a federal United States level, there are currently no laws that explicitly criminalize this type of intimate imagery of adults. Even with children, digitally created or otherwise fake imagery of children is still technically illegal. In reality, perpetrators are receiving barely any punishment, if at all, for making this type of material. So you're far more likely able to profit off of these images than you would be likely to face any consequences whatsoever for hosting.
It's a whole business model now. There's a lot of people who are making a lot of money off this.
In order to take a case like that to the level of prosecution where you would be looking at the types of consequences for child sexual abuse material, that would require a lot of time, a lot of resources, and a lot of dedicated people that as of right now, each individual victim does not have those resources available to them. California, for example, is probably one of the leading, if not the leading, US state in combating this issue, because there are deepfake laws on the books in California. And one of the things that those laws do is they create a private action of the right to sue someone civilly. But then the problem that arises is if those people don't live in California or if you can't identify them.
Yeah.
And many times they can track who these people are down, but they don't even live in the United States. So then jurisdictionally, it's like, how do you go after somebody in another country? You have to have even more powerful and well-connected people on your team to even consider doing something like that.
It's very complicated. Laws that exist, both concerning deepfakes and revenge porn, like the onus is on the victim.
When we look at why the deepfake issue hasn't been combated, it makes more sense when you think about it as just yet another failure in the long line of failures in addressing and combating all types of sexual crime.
These images, it doesn't matter that they're fake. They are still incredibly traumatizing.
In terms of looking at how it psychologically affects victims, it's almost easier or more comparable to compare the situation to if the images were actually authentic, because a lot of the psychological and social consequences are the same. For example, when a deepfake affects a college student, when you look at that college campus as like a community, the authority figures in that community and your peers in that community, they may not have any idea that the material is inauthentic.
Right.
So they may be treating you and they may be treating the consequences of this material as if it is real. They may not know the difference. And then on a personal level, your brain doesn't necessarily know the difference. You're seeing these images and you're feeling the same psychological consequences as if before deepfake technology evolved to this point. So it's really not that dissimilar. And the attitude being perpetuated is deeply misogynistic. It's the same attitude. The consequences are deeply misogynistic. They're the same consequences. You can lose your job regardless of it's whether it's really your body or not.
It feels like it's common sense as to why these images would be so devastating, you know? You Google yourself or an employer Googles yourself and this is what's popping up. These AI images are only getting better and better. It's not clear that they're fake.
Even if your boss or your professor knows that these images are fake, it could still impact their perception of you.
Absolutely.
Because in their brain, they're still picturing you naked. They're still picturing you engaged in a sexual act. This could change how they treat you in your school, in your workplace. The consequences, yet again, are the same.
Of course, men and women are affected by deepfakes, but this is an issue that disproportionately affects women and girls to the degree that like it's almost the entirety of it.
Yes. And a lot of times the response that I see to like this staggering gender disparity is like, well, men wouldn't like it if we did this to them, or like, what if we did this to men? Part of the problem with that is it all comes back to this idea of misogyny, because men's bodies being sexualized does not affect them on a social level in the same way that it does women. Men probably wouldn't be fired for, you know, a deep fake circulating of them. But with women, the likelihood of, you know, being fired, of being viewed differently by superiors and authority figures, it's a much bigger problem for women.
Yes.
So even if we did make a lot of deepfakes of men, which I don't think people should do because it's harmful to individuals regardless, it still wouldn't have the same social effect.
I was reading about the silencing effect of how more and more women and girls are terrified to participate in public forums.
Another aspect of this that I find really troubling is that a lot of so-called experts and just people on the internet will say, if you're so worried about this, then private your social media account and don't use your real face and don't put pictures of yourself on the internet. And that's doing the work of these misogynistic deepfake creators for them, because that is their end goal. So to tell women, just don't put your face on the internet, you're basically just following the exact same logic of the perpetrators. And in addition to that, it's discriminatory. It's saying you can't be an actress, you can't be a public figure, you can't be a politician or a journalist because now you have to deal with this.
Right.
So
like, we will do this to you.
The solution cannot involve, you know, asking women and girls to change their behavior. It doesn't matter if they put their picture on the internet because they could take a picture of them in the hallway and achieve the same results.
The thing with deep fake technology now is that once upon a time it took hundreds of images of a person's face to create a convincing deep fake, and you did need like decent computer processing power, I would say even significant, and then also programming knowledge. But now it's one or two images and anybody can do it. They have literal apps on your phone to create deepfakes. You just need like one photo and you can make it in a matter of minutes. This is why average citizens, women and girls, are now targeted because of the ease of this technology.
Yes. And this is a kind of a connecting force between the most famous women in the world and then average everyday women. And I saw some people react to the Taylor Swift deepfakes by saying, well, she's Taylor Swift, she's like the richest woman in the world, we should care more about the unknown women. And kind of the logical flaw there is that the only reason this technology was able to develop to the point where it affected everyday women and girls is because they trained these models and developed this technology on women like Scarlett Johansson.
Yes.
Because women like Taylor Swift and Scarlett Johansson, you have every single angle of their face and body because of the movies that they've been in and because of the public work that they've done. And so it starts with these women who are already exposed to the public, and then it does trickle down to private figures.
We need people like Taylor Swift to try and bring visibility to this issue. And like, if there's one thing the Swifties and Taylor Swift will do, it's something like that.
When I look at the public figures who are women, who are the most frequently targeted with deepfakes, they fall into a lot of different categories, but some of the ones that stick out to me are women who are in the video game space.
Oh, yeah.
And women who are in superhero movies, and women who are in the political field. These are male-dominated spheres of public life. And in recent years, as women have gained more power in these areas, now deepfakes are the technology that are emerging to try to push these women back out of these spaces. The deepfakes are used to punish them for, daring to exist in a superhero movie.
How are you feeling as someone who reports on this? Is there anything that's cause for hope?
There is a lot of movement happening at this current stage behind the scenes with, the women who are the most targeted by this, maybe finally getting some attention from lawmakers. Because, for example, Scarlett Johansson has been one of the biggest celebrity figures to repeatedly address this in the public eye. And a few years ago, she basically said, we've been trying for years and I've now come around to accept the fact that there's nothing that can be done. But now that there's not just Scarlett Johansson speaking up about this, now that there are high school aged girls speaking in front of the US Congress, and now that there are dozens, if not hundreds, of celebrity women speaking up about this, and politicians and people who have those global legislative and legal enforcement connections, now that we have this sort of critical mass of victims raising attention to this issue, there are things starting to be set in motion. And I think that one of the things that gives me hope is we're coming closer and closer to sort of the realization that the solutions do exist. It's just a matter of wanting and, in a lot of ways, forcing big tech companies to use the solutions at their disposal. And as soon as it reaches a point where they can no longer say, like, we're not the ones responsible for this, or there's nothing that we can do, because there are technological solutions, that's going to be the key to companies like Google actually proactively delisting these types of websites from search results.
This is starting at like a very, very young age. And I think a big part of also trying to combat this is education on consent, not just in regards to deepfake, but like truly understanding what consent is, truly teaching boys what consent is from an early age, so that they realize that something like this, where you're making these images, that is not consensual, and really putting the onus on them rather than on girls.
If people are interested in learning more about this issue, or if you have information or tips to share with me, you can find my work at nbcnews.com, and you can also find my email address there as well if anyone wants to reach out.
I want to thank you for coming on and talking about this with me.